We're going to look at how we are doing with our fight against corruption. And on that, we'll be looking at the Office of the Special Prosecutor, set up specifically to help with our fight against corruption. And I think the case was made that, yes, this office has to be set up so that we can, deal head-on with corruption, even though we have the likes of Shraj, Iyoko, and the Attorney General's office in existence. So we set this office up within, the passage of the bill was done expeditiously, and the Special Prosecutor was appointed. It took a while for the Special Prosecutor's office to be set up. Indeed, the Special Prosecutor had been lamenting about the state of affairs regarding his office. I think he still, once in a while, would, lament here and there, but today we're looking at how he's done. In the year. A budget of 180 million cedis was set aside, for the office in 2019. But how much has been disbursed, and exactly what has the disbursed sum been put to? These are some of the matters we'll be looking at. Winston, your assessment of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, and specifically the Special Prosecutor, Mr. Martin Amidu.
Well, you see, Abna, so in 2018, when the bill was passed and the appointment was made, many people talked about it. We're very happy, and again, that would bring us to expectations in this country.
Let me pause you there, right there, so that I, indicate that yes, Mr. Kojo Yankson has had to take leave of us because he has some other commitments, and so that's why you don't see him on the set. And let's say a big thank you to him for joining us. So,
yes, Abna. So prior to the establishment of the Special Prosecutor's Office, and like we do in this country, when we're setting up an institution, we think that is going to solve all our problems. You remember how, even in appointing, and the president says this is a man he believes in, and civil society groups were very impressed. They said, yeah, Martin Amidu, citizen vigilante, anti-corruption campaigner. And so all of a sudden, every little case of perceived corruption, a report is made to Martin Amidu.
Even before his office was set up, he was receiving petitions.
The least case is sent to Martin Amidu, because we say, the Special Prosecutor is the one supposed to deal with us. Now, you talked about 180 million Ghana cedis being given to him. That 180 million Ghana cedis, only out of the allocated 180 million, 28 million was disbursed to him.
Wow. That's less than 50, that's less than 25%.
Yes, 28 million Ghana cedis was disbursed to the Special Prosecutor by the time Parliament was considering his estimates for next year. So that's something we should also be looking at. The fact that we talked about we're going to give you a lot of money and then give him 28 million. His LI was passed, which was supposed to enable him to do a lot of things. He's talked about the investigations is in. But you also might have realized
two of them, right?
So a lot of some cases, he's taken some to court. The Mama Yarega bid that has been taken to court. He's also investigating other cases. But even with the board, he's supposed to indicate the list of cases. He's talked about numbers here and there. But let's put that aside, and let's look at the Special Prosecutor himself. I think sometimes when you stand for certain principles, they must guide your life as well. The bit about Martin Amidu, yes, he wants to be able to fight corruption. Is he being assisted in his fight against corruption? Do you get the impression that Martin Amidu is getting the best of support from the government and other agencies?
Well, you just said how much has been disbursed out of the 180 million. That should be an indicator. In
his episodes, hasn't he complained about how he's not being assisted?
Sure, and the lack of cooperation by certain appointees.
Isn't that time for Martin Amidu to actually send a signal to government and say you're not committed to helping me? So
you're suggesting he should walk out
of the office? He should have been gone.
Okay.
Martin Amidu, if Martin Amidu is really serious about fighting corruption and is really unhappy about what is happening, unless he's happy taking salary and always blaming government, the government is not doing anything.
On that one, Mr. Ndubugri, when Mr. Martin Amidu was appointed, or he was nominated for appointment, he did say that Mr. Martin Amidu, the Martin Amidu he knows, would leave the office if he is not supported. He did say that.
Exactly. And that is why I'm saying that. The Martin Amidu we all knew. If you say you're not being given enough support, if you say the president keeps telling his appointees to support you, and yet they're not supporting you, my simple advice would be since you're not getting the needed support, since you're willing to help fight corruption in this country, prove to all of us and get the government to start thinking by resigning. He should have been gone.
Very well. I mean, let's take a listen to the president during the Ghana Bar Association Conference 2019, where he made a statement in respect of how his government is fighting corruption, and then we'll come to the panelists for their perspectives on that. Let's take a listen to the president.
President Akufo-Addo insisted he acts based on recommendations from relevant state agencies.
It is not my job to clear or convict any person accused of wrongdoing or of engaging in acts of corruption. My job is to act on allegations of corruption by referring the issue or issues to the proper investigative agencies for the relevant inquiry and necessary action.
The president said such claims were orchestrated attempt by his opponent to tag his government as corrupt. He indicated that every alleged act of corruption which has been made against any of his officials is being or has been investigated by independent bodies such as SHRAJ, the CID, and in some cases by Parliament.
If an appointee is cleared of any wrongdoing, the evidence adduced and recommendations made by these agencies after the investigations are concluded are what clear the accused persons, not myself. None of these agencies has ever indicated any pressure from the executive over their investigations.
President Akufo-Addo stressed there has been increased funding for the accountability institutions of state, including Parliament, the judiciary, the Office of the Attorney General, SHRAJ, and the Auditor General. The president insisted that his government is committed to fighting corruption.
Okay, so that was the president speaking at the Ghana Bar Association conference in 2019, back in September this year. Let me go to you, Dr. Vladimir. In there, the president was saying that, attempts to resource accountability and corruption, anti-graft agencies, have been improved in the sense that, allocations they have increased and all of that. And, you heard what Winston said about the Office of Special Prosecutor in respect of 180 million and only 28, has been that. And I'm saying this knowing very well that whatever amount is allocated is not what you get. I mean, we see that happen all the time. I mean, you definitely get less than what is budgeted for, but government or the president is telling us that there's been some increase, so that in essence they are trying to, keep up with their promise to fight corruption. What do you make of that? How do you see our fight against corruption in the scheme of the many, if you like, the scandals that have hit this government since it's coming into office, but particularly looking at the period or the year 2019? How do you see this attempt at fighting corruption going? The president did make mention of the fact that it's not his place to, either prosecute or clear people. It's for the institutions mandated to do that. But we have seen in the past that people have had cause to complain about the president, making statements, quote unquote, suggesting that, well, certain people have been cleared of certain alleged instances of corruption and all.
I think it's good for the country that the perception about corruption is very high and everybody abhors that perception. Let's do something about it. That's positive. And again, I think I'll doff my hat for the president for his personal belief that we must fight this. Now, it's up to us, the institutions of state, the way things have been set up, to help fight corruption. I know the Special Prosecutor's Office, for example, has come to the limelight, and we debating the way the man, we knew him, very fiery and that kind of thing. He's come to the throne of anti-graft, whatever it is, and it's not working. In account, we say when you're pulling some, and then it's not coming, then something is holding it. And I believe something is holding it. I think we have been told that there's non-cooperation from government officials. I think I beg to differ. Let's note it. Any new such institution will have to create its own directions, apertures, for example. It looks as though the Attorney General's office will have to hive off some of its remit to this prosecutor's office. And I think these lines have not been...
Which is what was provided for by the Office of the Special Prosecutors
The
Act.
law,
Exactly.
the Act. And you know, because these things have not been properly demarcated, it brings a problem.
You think they've not been properly demarcated?
I think so. And I know why I'm saying so. Why? Because, for example, the Mahama Yariga case is a case in point. That the special prosecutor admits that he went beyond his remit. That's number one. Which means that the Attorney General has to be very careful of which cases have to be given to the special prosecutor. The special prosecutor on his own also wants to maybe go the way he thinks he wants to go. And that's where we see the discord. I think the Deputy Attorney General once made a certain remark, paraphrasing it. I could believe that it is because this kind of things have not been properly realigned.
I mean, the parallel institutions that work in...
That's number one.
Because we do even have the case of Daniel Domelo with the Auditor General situation, which is in court. Hopefully, we see between the IOCO and the OSC, who is...
So you see, the demarcation line between these institutions, IOCO, whatever it is, will hinder his work a little and might make things look as if, we don't want to fight corruption.
Do you think really it is a case of, those overlaps which is causing...
The overlaps may be a big problem. That's number one. Number two, it depends also on how government will just sit whatever parties there are for them to realign. In fact, if they really want to work, the Attorney General's office, IOCO, which other institution, the CID, whatever, they all have to... I thought by this time they would have some sort of coalition meetings, to decide. No, seriously, if you really want to fight, all of them are fighting corruption in the country. Why haven't we seen a form of sharing of ideas, information, and methodologies of prosecuting? That is lacking. That kind of collaboration among the agencies that might fight corruption.
You think their respective acts do not show the fine distinctions, or
no act will always show that fine distinction? That's why we always go to the Supreme Court for interpretation. The Ayarika case is a big case in point. So I believe if they are able to cooperate, they will, at the table, they will know that this case, pick it up, because if we all want to fight, but if they begin to protect their turf, we are not going to see corruption being fought. The next point is how much is to be given to him, and that I think the 28 million would be a good start.
Looking at, within the context of 180 million.
Listen to me. What did the budget? You didn't
180. Okay. You said it's a good start.
It's a good start. When I say it's a good start, why is 28 million sitting down and we are not seeing anything? That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying 28 million is enough.
Right.
We will need even more than maybe the 180 million. But then, once like the president is saying here, there's been some increase. Once something has been pushed, I'm a teacher, you give me a chalk, and there are no other visual aids and that sort of thing. And I say, because you are giving me a chalk, I'm sitting down. That's what I'm talking about. I need to be starting the teaching somehow, anyway. So, yes, as for the budgetary allocation, you don't get the full complement of what has been budgeted for. But then a start must be made. So we don't have to wait for the money. We really need to start working. We need to work towards this. And I believe all of us must be part of the fight against corruption.
Oh yeah, we're doing our bit. But if an institution is set up purposely to do that,
we're talking too much instead of helping.
Oh, you think we're talking too
much?
Well,
yes. The media, myself, everybody. Everybody's blaming.
And not spectators. We can't just sit on the fence and pretend everything is okay and not talk about it. Quickly, Dr. Napo.
Very quickly. This will be the last time that we'll be discussing corruption before our elections. Next year we are getting to elections, and corruption has always been an issue. I think if you zero in the special prosecutor in terms of fighting corruption, I think from the start we got it wrong. We got it wrong because, Ghanaians have always had this perception that the special prosecutor was going to be a panacea in dealing with corruption in this country. And to make specific reference to Prof's call for collaboration between the special prosecutor and other agencies. If you remember, the BCU issue. The special prosecutor said that the CID cannot clear BCU because he's investigating them. In fact, there seems not to be any kind of what? Collaboration between them. It should be. But all in all, I believe that the current government, led by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, came into power on one big pillar, the fight against corruption. By his demeanor, his history, his political, background, he was seen as somebody who is not corrupt, who has never been corrupt, and was somebody who was going to fight what? For the public purse. In fact, if you look at the Afrobarometer survey for 2017, when he had just entered into office, his ranking was so high. But the recent one that has been done, he's dropped by about 27%. In fact, today, most Ghanaians, half of Ghanaians believe that corruption is endemic in this country. Is it the case? Yes. It is because there have been instances of issues that Ghanaians would have wished that it shouldn't have been the case. Take PDS. PDS. You remember the drop the chamber issue?
Oh, yeah.
They dropped the chamber.
Now there's a new one, right? The glass.
This one, the PPA. The PPA. Yeah. We are talking of 2019 under review. The PPA boss.
Oh, yes. Remember? Contracts for sale.
You remember this guy at Ajako, who former energy minister who resigned? You remember? Of 2019. You remember this guy, Emmanuel, who was, is it NY? The street lights trading. The National Youth Authority thing. So all these things feeds into the perception that corruption is getting what? Endemic. Of course, the president needs to be applauded for what? For appointing Martin Amidu to occupy that office, for even creating that office. But the reality is that as far, not too long ago, June 1st, 2019, when Dr. Bawumia was asked what is going on with this person, he said, like, fighting corruption in this country is like what? Fighting demons.
We need to be exercised.
Demons. Those are the words of Dr. Bawumia. That fighting corruption in this country is like fighting what? Demons.
You mentioned a number of corruption scandals. I think we should look at them.
Yeah, but the truth is that government have taken steps to fight corruption.
So let's look at the contracts for sale, for instance. Let's start with the contracts for sale. So the PPA boss, president gets him suspended.
That is it.
People say, well, that's not enough.
No, but what I'm saying is that, look, fighting corruption is something that cannot be done overnight. You need to put in mechanisms and measures to deal with it. Setting up the office of the special prosecutor is a one step that will lead to what? In the fight against corruption. Digitization of, what do they call it, a DVLA, is a good step, but I think more needs to be what? More needs to be done. I would have wished that, in fact, 2021, if you want to enter into any appointment, political appointment, you need to declare your assets. Why is that asset now? That law is not being enforced. It's a law, but it is not being enforced. So,
they actually do declare their assets, but you don't get to see. They
declare, so it's as good as not declaring.
Just hand it over. So it's very simple. Declare, hand it over, and that's the end of it.
But that is wrong. That is wrong. So I think the fight against corruption in this country, I personally am disappointed in the office of the special prosecutor. I won't lie about it. I'm not that hopeful regarding what would be done before the end of the 4-year term of Nana Addo, because as we speak, Winston, I don't know of any government official under the previous administration who is in jail. Of course, some of them are in court, but the reality is that in 2015, 2016, we were made to understand that they are corrupt, and we were hoping. Yeah, we're hoping that today that we have a special, look at the euphoria and ecstasy that's characterized the coming into being of the special prosecutor. But what is being done? People are getting what? I mean, disappointed.
Right. Now you talked about the law on the declaration of assets. Now you see, I would want us to also bring in the law about when it comes to the contracts for sale issue, because that bordered on the fact that the PPA boss, you know, was engaged in certain, doing certain contracts for his company, what's it called, Talent Discovery Limited, and that company won several bids. The issue about he having to recuse himself from proceedings of the board. No.
You're talking about
yes, and you know, it became an issue because when you look at, for some time now, I think the laws that come in respect of such statutory bodies makes provision for the governing board, and in determining certain matters, members or members of the board would have to disclose their interests and then would have to recuse themselves. The problem, or they are found at fault, if they refuse to disclose their interests and sit on the deliberation of matters which have their interests involved. You understand?
Yeah.
So people are saying, well, really and truly, if he did recuse himself, then it was pursuant to or in accordance with, you understand? So we are now having to look at that particular provision or that law, whether or not it's serving us any good. Because if you just recuse yourself, I think somebody was on the show the last time we discussed and said, well, they may be absent, but their spirits would be left in the room. And then, you understand? So we need to, yes.
Even on that bit, I think that just to chip this in here,
Sure, and
because
then I go
talked
to
about the PPA bit,
yes.
I think our Public Procurement Act, even after the amendment, is still problematic.
Exactly.
And enforcement
definitely.
is a challenge.
A challenge.
Because at the beginning, by the end of the financial year, every procurement entity is expected to actually send its procurement needs to the Public Procurement Authority.
Sure.
So by now, they should have sent it to the Public Procurement Authority. So at what point does the Public Procurement Board have to
scrutinize all of that and then
single, sole source
whether or not
contracts?
it's necessary?
At what point did you recognize that
you had
this?
an interest.
This is very urgent, and so I look at it. Many institutions do not submit to the board,
Which raises issue, Winston, about the fact that we have currently a ministry of what?
That's the point.
Is
They
it
do not
procurement?
send it. And so 2 months to the time for procurement, they start saying, I have an issue. It's about time the Public Procurement Board, tells these entities, I won't give you the permission. Next time, they will do the right thing.
Right.
But you see, we don't do, people go, then we say, I recuse myself.
No.
You can recuse yourself.
Of course.
In one
The
or two
spirits will
cases.
remain in the
If it's
room and
11,
then
it raises doubts.
that's it.
11 times.
It's just too
doubts.
many. But quickly, yes, Mr. Kofi Yeboah, your thoughts on this government's, fight against corruption. How do you think that has been in 2019?
Well, I think initially our hopes were raised. I think if you look at the steps that have been taken, they point to great hopes. The passage of the RTI bill and the establishment of the SP, they all point to the fact that the president is very serious at addressing this issue. But on the ground, as everyone seems to be saying, things have not gone the way we had anticipated. For example, I would have expected that there would have been some action on the ground. I know there are some cases ongoing, but then what we were made to believe initially has not been the case. And I think I agree with the point that we were all made to think that SP was coming to deal with everything. So I sit down and ask myself, what has SRAD been doing? What has Yoko been doing? And the other anti-graft agencies, what have they been doing? Right. Have they folded up simply because SP has come? And for me, I think we need to be more committed in the way we do it. And when the president talked about increasing the funding for these institutions, I wanted to know by how much. So you can then appreciate the issues well. Right. But I think on the ground, you can put a person on a rooftop and remove the ladder beneath the person. Yeah. Okay. So we are all seeing that the person is up there, but you have disabled him. So you may set up the institutions and everything, but if you are not equipping the institutions to do the job that they have to do, then we are not going to get anywhere. So I think funding is key. 28 million out of out of 180, to me, is not adequate at all. You may want to find out what can that money be used for. Can it be used to do something concrete, or how is that money going to help to speed up the work of the SP? And I also share Winston's view. I think if Honorable Martin Amidu thinks he's not getting the support he needs to do his work, and the honorable thing to do is to
check out.
Is to leave.
You must go.
Very well.